Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Wool Through the Trees knitting podcast. My name is Katie. I am a 25-year-old maker living in beautiful Rhode Island. This is a podcast where I like to share all of the things that I have been knitting and spinning and yarn dyeing since the last time we talked, which is usually somewhere around 10 days to 2 weeks. I've been getting better with my schedule. So based on my notes, today seems like it will be a long episode, so I think we should just get right into it. I do want to touch on what I'm wearing, although you can't really see that much of it, and that's because I'm not supposed to show it to you until the pattern is released. This is the Lacerback Tank by Jamie Hoffman. It was a test knit that I did a couple weeks, maybe months ago. My timeline of events is not the best. But it was very quick to knit, and I'm allowed to show parts of it. I just can't show the full thing until the pattern is released. But she has photos of it on her Instagram, so if you're curious, go look at her Instagram. Highly recommend the pattern, highly recommend test knitting for Jamie Hoffman. Everything has been going very well. But Lacerback Tank, it is a gorgeous, nearly 80-degree day, which is why I am wearing a tank top during the last week of October. I have my little jacket on top, just because I said I'm not supposed to really show the full tank top until it's released. So this is my way around it. So that was a finished object a couple podcasts ago. I showed it to you as a work in progress as well. If you're curious, you can go back and watch those episodes. But for today, let's get thing number one out of the way, and we're gonna jump straight in to finished objects, of which I only have one. You saw this as a work in progress last week, and I mentioned that this is a sneak peek of a colorway from my winter collection. Most of my whips today are going to be samples for my winter collection, so they will also be sneak peeks for you guys, although if you are watching this after November 1st, 2024, all of the colorways will be out. And if you're watching this in the last week of October, so like any day other than the day it was posted, then you'll probably have seen the colorways on my Instagram as well. So I feel comfortable talking about them because I feel like most people aren't going to watch this the day it's published, so it's not really a surprise. So, here's my finished object. This is a headband, if you could not tell. The pattern, it's got the little like twisty guy right in the front. This pattern is called Marble Staircase by Celeste Knitwear, I believe is the designer. It's a free pattern. I feel like most of her patterns are free that I saw. And it's just a cabled headband. You knit it flat back and forth, and then at the very end you sew it together to get that little twist in the front. My mom and my sister both really enjoy having these little headbands with a twist. For the winter time, they're just not hat people, so I make them headbands. So I got some fuzzies on it. This will go to either my mom or my sister, I'm not sure which. It only took like 40 or so grams of yarn, so I have plenty of yarn in this colorway, which is yet to be named. If you want to play a little matching game and look on my Instagram, you can probably figure it out by now. But I can make whoever doesn't get this headband, either my mom or my sister, I can make them a different headband, same yarn, so they can match but have different patterns. So that's my first and only finished object. Isn't that so sad? Just a headband. I know. That's not to say I have not been working though, because I had a little case of cast-on-itis. First, before I show you, hold on. I just needed to make sure I was going to tell the truth to you guys. I believe this is the only thing I have that you guys have seen before. This is my Improv'd tank. We're just gonna get this out of the way so I can jump on into all the fun and exciting new stuff with you guys. So you have seen this many podcasts in a row now because, like I mentioned last week, I previously finished this, and once I like bound it off, once it was off the needle and not scrunched up, I was like, oh, That is nowhere even close to my size, and I'm a person who loves positive ease, as I've stated many times on the podcast. But 20 inches of positive ease in a vest, not my vibe. I could go 10 inches of positive ease, but I think what I'm gonna have is closer to like 4 to 6. So here's the vest if you haven't seen it before. I will hold it back so you can see it in all its glory. This is my hand-dyed yarn, as is, I think, like, oh, I have one project that's not my hand-dyed yarn, so I know. This is my hand-dyed yarn. It's oopsie skeins from my spring collection, and I've talked about them many, many times. So here is the progress past the armpit. So 6 inches maybe? And last week I probably had 3 inches. I have not been working on this as much. It's a V-neck. I'm not gonna talk about it that much because I feel like you guys have seen it a lot before. How much yarn do I have left? Great question. I didn't realize my balls were so little. I debated saying that sentence and I went through with it. So here's what I have left. These are probably 25 to 30 grams. This one's probably 25, this one's probably 30. So this is almost done, which is fine, because the other issue I had when I knit it before is like all of my neckline and armhole finishings were all in I-cord, and then I bound off the body, but I didn't want that to be an I-cord because I thought it would look weird. And then I realized once I had bound off the body, I was like, ooh, actually I want this, you know, minus 15 inches of positive ease, and I think I want to add ribbing to the bottom, but only like an inch of ribbing, like not a lot of ribbing. And then I was like, ooh, should I add ribbing to the armhole, which I haven't done yet, but I think I'm gonna add something to the armhole, because as it is now, it curls in a lot, as you can see, and I don't really know like how to prevent that besides like picking up and knitting on it to make it not roll. So there will be something happening with the armholes. The neckline, like I said, I think I'm gonna do an I-cord around it, but the V is like perfect. So I don't wanna, it's a fingering way I-cord. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm talking out my fears. I don't think I need to be worried. So hopefully this will be done soon. I showed you how much yarn I have left, but like I said, I have not really been working on it. That was previously like my dedicated TV knit, but I haven't been watching a lot of TV because I've realized that I really need to get my butt in gear when it comes to knitting pattern samples for my winter collection if I want to get them all done by the time the collection releases. So I had a major case of cast-on-itis, and I cast on a lot of pattern samples. Before we jump into that, I'm going to show you this other thing I'm working on. Everything is like so exciting to me today because this is a new design that I am designing. And I'm just gonna show it to you. This is the one thing that's not in my hand-dyed yarn. This is Knit Picks Wool of the Andes. If you are a podcast viewer, you will recognize these colors because they are the leftovers from my PhD candidate sweater. Let me hold that a little bit closer so you guys can see it. This is going to be a bottom-up vest. And that's all I'm gonna say because I don't want anyone to steal my ideas. But bottom-up vest, you saw the color work. It's very fun to do. I had cast that on because I just had like a spur of the moment idea one night as I was knitting on my Improv'd vest, which lives in my Painted Fern Fiber Co. project bag. I was knitting on my Improv'd shirt that you just saw, and I just like ding dong light bulb went off in my head. I was like, I have this magnificent idea for a bottom-up vest, and I just cast it on willy-nilly and worked on it like non-stop for like 3 days, and then I was like, and like graded the full pattern and worked on, and then I was like, oh, my collection releases next week. I need to get my butt in gear. So then I cast on everything. The first thing that I cast on were, I don't really know how to show this because one is still on the needles and then one is totally done, ends woven in, everything. So I'm just gonna show you the done one first. It's this pair of mittens that is called the Cloudburst mittens. I have no idea who the designer is, but it will be linked down below. So they are just this cutie pie little like lace mitten. The palm is in, hello, focus, thank you. The palm is in stockinette, and then the back of the hand has this lace. This is not blocked, so it's a little crinkly still. This is knit up in my merino, nope. This is knit up in my Mohair Merino base, which is very fun. It's the first time that I personally have knit anything with it because it's a new base specifically for my winter collection. And I just wanted to see if I would like it enough to put it into the collection, and spoiler alert, I freaking love it. So let me show you the ball. And it doesn't look very like halo mohair-y in the ball. It's a single ply superwash merino core with mohair sprinkled through it. Like I said, it does not look like it has the mohair halo in the ball, but like, I don't know if you'll be able to see like on camera, but the mittens have this like crazy mohair halo. I feel like it's not showing up very well, but in photos that I took of it with my phone, like it's furry as heck. This is the right hand mitten, so I had to move my watch to put on the mitten for ya. So here you can see the lace pattern a little bit better. Let's scooch it all the way down. It's really nice. I followed the pattern exactly, but I did no such thing. I don't think I said that this was another color for my winter collection, but it is, just so we're on the same page. This is another sneak peek. I followed the lace pattern exactly, but because it is a free pattern, it only has one size, which is 52 stitches of circumference. My hands are not big, so I backtracked that down to a 40 stitch circumference, and pre-blocking it fits me like a glove. So you can see that. So the lace chart is like 20 something stitches, and then the other 18 or so are on the palm. And the other modification I made, all of my modifications are in my Ravelry project page if you ever care to look, but the other modification I made is I made the thumb gusset bigger and longer, because in the pattern they only had you increase 14 stitches and I increased 20 because I have a meaty thumb from all of my video gaming. So I put in a bigger thumb gusset, but the length of the thumb is pretty much to pattern. The lace is to pattern. I just put the circumference less circumference. So as you can see, the first mitten is 100% done. Like I said, all the ends are woven in and everything. The second mitten is almost there. It's almost there. All I have left to do is, in fact, the thumb. So, and obviously weave in the ends. So as you can see, I don't want to like bang into you guys with the knitting needles, but there's the second mitten. Need to weave in the ends, need to do the thumb. I was gonna do the thumb like the same day that I had done the first mitten's thumb. Something about me is I hate knitting thumbs. I hate knitting like really fiddly small circumference. Like the thumb was fewer than 30 stitches, and then I was decreasing as well to get past like the meat of my hand and onto like the actual circumference of my thumb itself. So I think I ended with like 20 stitches on magic loop, so it's like 10 stitches per needle, and that just, it drives me crazy. I hate knitting things like that, so I was like, yeah, one thumb is enough. One thumb is enough. So I'm probably gonna have to, you know, kick my butt into gear once more and just power through it, knit the thumb, and like once I knit the thumb, all I have to do is weave in 4 ends and then I'm done. Like, easy peasy lemon squeezy. I just need to, you know, amp myself up and get it done. All right, so let's move on to another pattern sample. Nope, another collection sample? What are these even called? I feel like I'm losing my mind. So this is a colorwork hat, which you are about to see. It's obviously not done, so it's a little hard to hold up, but how can I best show this? Perhaps like this. It's a very, very fun hat pattern. I purposefully went for 2 kind of like lower contrast colors, but like, doesn't that look so stinking cool? And it's not even blocked. So like, this is a, I told you that was Mohair Merino. This is my Rustic DK, so it's a non-superwash Peruvian Highland wool DK weight yarn. And so once I block it, once I wash it and block it and stuff, this is gonna bloom and it's gonna make those colors like really meld together. And I'm just so excited because this like geometric pattern is so fun. This is the Ophidia hat. Can't remember the designer, but again, everything will be in the description because my memory is not great. I'm surprised I even remembered the name of the pattern, but it is the Ophidia hat. I should show you my balls, should I not? So here we are. These are the 2 colors. Again, if you are a super sleuth and you go on my Instagram, I'm sure you'll be able to find out the colorway names if it is, you know, around the start of November. We're gonna take a little tea break. Moving on to my last collection sample, pattern sample. I keep calling it a pattern sample, but it's not a sample for the pattern, it's a sample for the collection, but I'm sure you understand what I'm trying to say. The last sample that I have to share with you is a shawl, and this title is in French, so please forgive me if I butcher it. I believe it is called Chale Saison. I do not speak French, but it is just a fingering weight garter and lace shawl. As you can see, I'm not very far into it, but I am about halfway through the first lace section. There's going to be like alternating garter stitch and then stripes and then lace, garter, stripes, lace, etc., until it's done. So this is 2 colors of fingering weight. This is my Sustainable Sock base. I love these 2 colors. When I was trying to project plan to see how I could most efficiently get every colorway into a sample, and I put these 2 colors next to each other. When I put them next to each other, it was like the biggest light bulb just went off in my head. Because I was like, oh, wow, like, who would have thunk it, you know, pink and burgundy together. Pfft, blew my mind when I saw them next to each other. I was like, that's literally perfect. And you may recognize this color. That's all I'm gonna say. You may recognize it. Here it is up close in garter stitch. This is, like I said, a fingering weight shawl. It's knit on, the pattern recommends US 5 needles, which is a 3.75 millimeter. I, however, am a very loose knitter, especially with lace. I'm very loose, so I went down to a US 4, which is 3.5 millimeter, and I'm actually knitting on wooden needles, which is like a shock. Like I feel like every time I knit with wooden needles, I have to tell you guys, I think I've only knit maybe 2 other projects in the year that I've been podcasting on wooden needles, and it's because it's like my my only set of DPNs in a size US 3, which is a 3.25 millimeter, my only set of DPNs for a size 3 are wooden, so like anything that I need to knit on DPNs will... You understand what I'm trying to say without finishing that sentence, I'm sure, but I'm knitting on wooden needles, which helps because, as I'm sure you know if you are a seasoned knitter, knitting on wooden needles kind of helps tighten up your gauge, which is something that I desperately need because, like I said, I am a very loose knitter, so like knitting fingering weight on a 3.5 millimeter, which is actually what this tank top is knit on, it's a 3.5 millimeter needle, it's just like baffling to me because that's just larger than I would ever consider knitting for myself because my gauge is so loose and my tension is so loose. And as you can see, like you can see light through the garter stitch, which is not my preference, but I'm just gonna hope and pray that it'll block out. It'll block out, right? And anyways, this is just for a sample, so perhaps I will wear it. I've said multiple times before, I am not really a shawl girly, and I'm eating my words because my final new cast on is a shawl. It's not really a shawl. This is The Simple Thing by Melina Brell. I hope I got that right. And this is with my hand spun yarn. I have a needle sticking out of it, so my apologies. This is my hand spun. This is 100% American Rambouillet. It was dyed by me, spun by me, and I had mentioned this previously on the podcast that I thought it was like overspun in some areas, and so I didn't want to part with it because I just felt uncomfortable giving someone my hand spun if it wasn't like the highest quality that I could produce. But as I like wound it into a ball, I realized it was a lot less overspun than I had originally thought. Like in my head, I was rating it at like a B to B plus grade, at like an 85% good. But like as I wound it into a ball, I was like, no, this is like an A, a solid A, like 93 to 95% good. So I need to be less harsh on myself. And here is my little baby cast on. What am I telling you? My little baby simple thing? Shawl. There we go. So this is, if you are unaware of this pattern, this is kind of like a Sophie scarf almost, but I and a lot of other people do not support Petite Knit because she is not a size inclusive designer. So this is a similar vibe to Petite Knit's Sophie scarf, but it's a little bit bigger. It's not really like an ascot. I'm using that word and I hope I'm using it correctly, but that's what I would describe the Sophie scarf as like a little ascot. You like wrap it around once and then tie it, and it's that to me is more like fashion, and this is more of like a pointed scarf. So instead of your scarf being a really long rectangle, your scarf is like a really long rhombus shape almost, except one side is straight, so that would be a triangle. I am so good at geometry, am I not? So anyways, here it is, my little hand spun simple thing. This is about a fingering weight yarn, I would say. A little bit of like a thicker fingering weight in some areas. I don't even know that there are spots where it's like a true sport. But again, I am knitting this on size US 4, which is a 3.5 millimeter, and I'm actually loving it. I'm loving the way, I think because it is a hand spun, I'm loving the way that it chunks up and it gets in there. And you can't really see light through the garter stitch. I had previously tried knitting this on a US 5 3.75 millimeter needle. I had cast it on and then I knit a couple rounds or a couple rows in garter stitch, and the light was shining through and I was like, nope, I'm already doing that with the shawl. I don't need to do that with the scarf as well. So I sized down to a US 4. I have 3 projects on a US 4 right now because this colorwork hat is also on a US 4. So that's apparently just my needle of choice at the moment. And let me look at my notes. Improv'd tank, diamond vest, the mittens, the hat, the shawl, the handspun simple thing. That's it for my whips. It's time for spinning, but first, please take a moment to hydrate. All right, now that we have hydrated, let's move on to spinning, which is probably my favorite part of the podcast, and it's probably my favorite part of other people's podcasts that I watch. Unfortunately, I feel like it doesn't seem like I've made that much progress since last podcast episode, because last time I was working on this superwash merino spin, and I think this one was on the spindle. So I spun the other half, which, as you can tell, it's more like 60-40 instead of 50-50, so I'm gonna end up with like a little mini skein of this plied on itself, but that's fine. I had this one on the spindle because I spin on drop spindles, which you're about to see next. And so all I had to do was wind this off onto my bobbin, quote unquote bobbin. It is a toilet paper roll in case you were wondering. And then I spun this, and then I wound this yesterday, maybe the day before yesterday. I can't keep my days straight. It is a problem. So now, next up, I just have to apply these together, and then I'll have the finished yarn next time to show you guys. And I definitely did show you the braid. So as you might not be able to see it, because the blue is on the outside right now, but there is some pastel purples. Ooh, you can see some right at the top right there. There's some pastel purples, some pastel greens in there. And so I can't wait to see how that's going to look plied together, because in my mind it's going to be glorious, but I just hope that the final product is as good as it is in my head. That is that. You will see a finished yarn next time I podcast. I've also started a new spin. So that was Superwash Merino Carded Sliver, which is a woolen preparation of fiber. Good words today. Woolen preparation of fiber. I was practicing my long draw. Hello, pause, rewind. I was practicing my long draw, especially on this one, which is probably why I got significantly more yardage. As you can tell, this bobbin is like bulging in the center and this one is normal. I was practicing my long draw because, like I said, woolen prep. And I was doing almost like, I would say like a supported long draw. I've mentioned previously that doing long draw on a drop spindle is like legitimately terrifying for me. But I want you to picture this. So drop spindle hangs down, right? And you spin it, and that's what puts the twist into your fiber. And if you're pulling short forward, which is a worsted type of spin, you're going to pull like this. And so your fiber supply will be in this hand, and you're going to pull little bits off, and then it will spin down with your drop spindle, right? I was like, yeah, I would say that's supported long draw if I'm going like this and like letting twist in like this. If you don't spin on a drop spindle, that's probably nonsense to you, but like this and like letting it in like that, I think that's supported long draw because it goes like at an angle and then down like that. All right, moving on to my new spin, which is on its spindle. This is actually almost done. So this will be the first ply of a 2-ply. I am just a 2-ply spinner. So this is the first ply of a 2-ply, and let me unwind my fiber so you can see the actual cop of it. And this is Falkland. I can't remember if I've already said that, but this is Falkland. It was in fact dyed by me, and you can't really tell in this like iteration of it. Probably the lighting is not the greatest, but like with your eyeballs you can see there's like minute variations of it going from like purple to blue, because this is like a very meager amount of the fiber that I have twisted on there, but there is like purple, blue, and pink. I'm not sure a good way to like show it to you guys. You might be able to see that. There's like purple, blue, and pink. It's like a very, it oscillates between cool tones and warm tones. So it's a very fun spin, and it's kind of like addictive because all you want to do is just like get to the next piece and like see how it will change and how it will spin, and it's very, very fun to spin. So this is, like I said, the almost complete first ply. I probably, once I spin the fiber that's attached, I literally have like 5 grams left of the half of the braid. So this is almost done. And I'm going to do that as like a true fractal. No, I'm not. I'm not. If you are unaware, I am a very like willy-nilly spinner. I don't like make sure that all of my fiber is spun from the same direction, and I don't like weigh out when I split my braids, and I don't like count when I split my braids. I just kind of like do whatever the fiber is telling me. Like if it's naturally splitting in a certain place, that's where I split it, and then like I just kind of like pull whatever is in the heap of fiber on my bed and spin that. So I'm a chaotic spinner, I will say that for sure, but with this purple spin I'm trying to get it like more technically correct and have it be like an actual fractal-ish spin, because I split my braid in half vertically. So I split it in half. They're kind of even. It doesn't really matter to me if they're even or not. And then I think I split one half into, I either split one half into 4 or 6, I can't remember, but that's not the half I'm spinning. So I split the big half into like 4 or 6, and then I split the little half into, I want to say 8. It's either 6 or 8. So it's either a 4 to 6 or a 6 to 8. So it's kind of a fractal, but not really. And again, like, because the fiber that I dyed is like so tonal and there's no like clear beginning or end, I'm just kind of like going with whatever. I'm not making sure it's every piece A to B. It's kind of like A to B, A to B, B to A to B. Like, it doesn't really matter to me. So we'll see how that comes out. And then the last thing that I wanted to show you is my up next for spinning. So like I said, this first ply is almost done. It might actually be a finished yarn next time we podcast, and this will probably be a finished yarn next time I podcast. And this braid of fiber I dyed on the same day as I dyed this braid of fiber, and so you can see I was in a very purple mood, but this one is like more like true like electric violet purple, and this is more of like a dusty like mauvey purple, and then there's a lot of blue in there. There's some pink that's separated out, but like this braid of fiber like literally owns my soul. Like I love this braid so much. So this is going to be my next spin. You can see some of the pinks on this underside of the fiber, the underside of the braid, and there's like even some greens that came out, but like, oh my god, dude, is that not gorgeous? I can't stop staring at it. That's so pretty. So this is going to be my next spin. This is domestic wool. That's that's all I know. It's domestic wool. It's probably 26 or 27 microns. Like it's not really soft. but it's like, it's not scratchy either. Like, that's fine for me. It's very warm. Just, this is my new scarf, guys. Yeah, probably like, yeah, 26-ish microns. It's really nice. I will probably try and spin this thicker. I know I said that last episode, last podcast. I had that braid of Targi that I was like, this is gonna be my up next, and I think I'm gonna spin it thicker. I'm taking a break from the Targi because once I dyed this, I was like, yo, this needs to be next. So I think this is the one that I'm going to spin thicker because, again, this is a more like rustic-y type of wool, and so the individual fibers themselves are thicker. So I think it'll be better suited to spin a thicker yarn. It may be my first plied worsted weight yarn, which will be interesting. And then this, I don't think I mentioned this, but this is like just my average thickness. So this will probably be around a sport or a DK, depending on how the Falkland like really plumps up. So that is it. Yes, I'm making sure I covered everything. I got all 3 of the things on my spinning checklist, and now it's time to move on to reading all of the books that I have been enjoying or not enjoying. So last week or last podcast, I mentioned that I was reading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue as well as The Silent Patient. Those were my 2 books in progress. I finished The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I gave it a solid 1 star. I talked about this a little bit more in depth in previous podcast episodes. This book took me 3 weeks to read, which is like literally unheard of because I am a lifelong reader. Like, my mom is a librarian, so I have been reading since I popped out, you know? And I am a person who can crush a 600 to 700 page book in 1 day. Like, I can crush it. I will just fly right through it. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue was 400 pages and it took me 3 weeks. Just because I did not like it. And the Goodreads reviews are like very high. Everybody loves it. I knew going in that I wouldn't enjoy it that much because I don't like the author. Not like anything against her personally, I just don't like her writing style. So I knew going into it I wouldn't enjoy the book that much, but I wanted to read it for the premise. Like, I like talked about this in previous podcasts, I know, but the idea of the book was so good that I felt like I had to push through it just to see how, like, where she went with it, where the author went with the story. I felt like, you know, I just had to. It kind of, like, it ended up like how I imagined it would end up. I don't want to give any spoilers, but the ending was kind of where I had envisioned it, but the journey it took to get to the ending was, like, way too long. This book also utilizes like time skipping, so it goes back and forth between present and past, and I actually think the book would have been way better if it just went in chronological order. I am a person who loves time travel, time skipping. I'm a person who loves multiple points of view in a novel. I just think that the book would have been more impactful. Like, the story would have held more weight if the book was actually in chronological order. That's just my opinion. But that was, you know, it was not a fun read. I'm really happy I'm done with it. The Silent Patient, I am currently about 60% of the way through that one. That one actually got put on hold because after I finished The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, I felt like I needed, you know, something fantasy, because The Invisible Life was kind of like urban fantasy almost. Like, it was just like a little sprinkle of magic. There was just like 2 magical people in the entire universe in that book, basically. So I felt like I needed something a little bit more fantastical because fantasy is like my favorite genre. So I started reading One Dark Window, and oh my god, that book has popped up so many times on my recommended, both on Goodreads and on Kindle Unlimited. It has popped up as like something that I should read next because it fits in with all of the other books that I like, and every time I read the description, it has a different description on Goodreads than it does on Kindle Unlimited. I have read both descriptions multiple times, and both descriptions have never spoken to me. Like, I would read both of them and just be like, like, that doesn't really sound compelling to me. Like, that doesn't really sound like something I would enjoy reading. But the cover, every time I see the cover, I look at it and I'm like, ooh, I would love that book. And then I read the description, I'm like, I would not love that book. I just sucked it up and I figured it can't be worse than Addie LaRue. And I powered through that book in less than 24 hours. Like, I started it at, I don't know, maybe 10 p.m. on whatever night, Wednesday night, let's just say. I started at 10 p.m. and I finished it the next day at like 5 p.m. because I was just like, I was so hooked. I loved it so much. The world of magic was so fun. I could visualize, like, this is my first Rachel Gillig book. I think it may be, I may be wrong, but I think this might be her first published book. I'm sorry if I am ignorant of her works, but I love her writing style. It was so cinematic. I could picture every instance perfectly in my mind, the way she describes the characters. I could visualize everything so well. It made me scared. Like, as I was reading it, I was like shaking in my boots. I was like, I'm like immersed right now. Like, this is impressive, the way that I was like fully in the book. And there was a little bit of like obvious plot syndrome and stupid main character syndrome where I'm like, oh my god, girl, do you really not get this? Like, hello. I don't want to give any spoilers. I don't want to give any information about it because it's so good. Like, I just need you, if you haven't read it, I need you to read it and go in totally blind. Don't know anything about it. Just read it. And I don't want to say read it and weep, but you might weep because it was very powerful. And I finished it and I instantly downloaded the sequel because it's a 2-book series, also known as a duology. So the first book is One Dark Window. The second book is Two Twisted Crowns. I instantly downloaded the second book as soon as I finished the first because I was like, I am not one for this cliffhanger and I need to get right into it. So the second book, I'm not done with it, but it does the multiple perspectives, switching points of view, which, like I said, I am a big fan of. I'm not that far into it because I felt bad for shirking my duties and my responsibilities, and as you can see, or as you have previously seen in the past hour or so, I have a lot of things to work on, knitting-wise and business-wise. So when I dedicate a full 24 hours to reading a book and avoid all of the things that I need to do, gotta have balance. So I started it, and then once I went to bed that night, I was like, okay, I need to be done with this book until I finish one of my whips. Because you saw I only had one finished object. Until I finish one of the things that you saw today, I can't read Two Twisted Crowns. That is my ultimatum for myself. So One Dark Window, I gave that 4.5 stars. I know I didn't say that, but I gave One Dark Window 4.5 stars because, like I said, there's just that little bit of stupid main character syndrome where I'm like, I want to smack you across the face because you're too dumb to realize what's happening. And like I said, Silent Patient, that went on hold while I powered through One Dark Window. So 60% of the way done with the Silent Patient, but I'm sure I'll finish that soon because it is a very like snowball type of novel where like one thing just leads to the next and the next and the next, and it's like impossible to put down. It's a real page turner. So the Silent Patient will hopefully be done soon. Two Twisted Crowns I will resume as soon as I finish something. And then the other thing that I wanted to touch on was that I am still watching Gilmore Girls. I mentioned last podcast episode that I am rewatching it for the festivity of fall. I had previously watched up to the end of season 5, if I'm remembering correctly, when I was in high school, so like 10 years ago. And I mentioned this last time, but I can't stand Rory in the later seasons, so I had to stop watching it. I know what happens. I fully know the plot because, again, it's a 20-year-old show. So I know everything that happens. You're not going to spoil it for me if you want to discuss it with me. I am currently at the end of season 5 again, so I'm about to embark in uncharted territory for myself. I can't quite recall, because again I watched it 10 years ago, I can't quite recall if I started season 6 in my first watch through, but like I know I'm on the cusp of things that I haven't seen yet. So that's going well. I think I said I'm at the end of season 5 currently, but I may have forgotten to mention that. So that's going well. And what else do I have to say? I mentioned last podcast episode, or maybe 2, mentioned previously that I will be traveling at the end of this month, which is very exciting. So you can, I don't know if I'll be posting about my trip on Instagram. I might be posting about it, but you know, follow me and find out. I will be posting the colorway reveals on my Instagram in the coming week. My collection will be launching on November 1st, which is a Friday. It will be a dyed to order collection. I think I've talked about this a little bit previously, but since it's next week, let's start talking about it a little bit more in depth. There are 7 colorways. You saw 6 of them today. So 1 is still a mystery to you, but there are 7 colorways. They are all tonals. They are going to be dyed to order. I have 12 bases for this collection, which is a large undertaking, but you know, I have FOMO when it comes to bases, so I was like, you know what, the more the merrier, the more the freaking merrier. So 7 colorways dyed to order across 12 bases. All of my pricing is on my Instagram, and because it is dyed to order, the turnaround time will be variable depending on where you are in line and, you know, how many different colorways you order, because like if you order 1 skein of something, that's obviously going to be a lot faster than if you order 5 skeins in every colorway. You know what I mean? So I think that is the deal on that. The collection will be available from November 1st to February 1st, so it is a full, true winter collection spanning from November to February. You get 4 months to place your orders, dyed to order. So like if you run out of yarn in January and you're like, oh my god, I need another skein to finish my sweater, it's okay. There will be time to place another order. And I think that is it. So I just wanted to thank everyone so much for watching. Thank you for hanging out with me. Please leave your thoughts and feelings in the comments. If you have any questions, if you want to rain on my parade, that's acceptable too. So please feel free to let me know what you're working on, if you're knitting or spinning or crocheting or doing some other hands-on crafty thing while you're watching this podcast. Please feel free to let me know that in the comments. So until next time I see you guys, which will be in November, which is practically winter, am I right? Until I see you again, happy making.